Hi everybody, it's Andy Feld, the founder of Gift 631, and it is a real pleasure and privilege to be joined again by both Richard West and Jim Brandon. And in this session, we're going to dive very quickly into the world of motivation, teams, and winning cultures. So Richard, I'm going to move straight to yourself, and clearly there's some challenging times at the moment. So what do you believe great leaders should be doing to inspire and motivate their teams?
I think I could almost answer that in a slightly different way, Andy, because yes, they are very challenging times. And I think all of us on every continent, because of the COVID-19 outbreak, have been going through, a range of challenges and tragedies in some cases. For me, really, I think the most important thing, the leadership issue and the motivation is also tied into the culture of the business. And in a lot of work that I did with my co-authors in Performance at the Limit, a series of books that we've written and published globally, we talked to a lot of leading people within the teams, the Formula One teams, and what we found was, to a man and a woman, they pretty much said the same thing. They talked about four things. They talked about, in times of good and bad, first of all, you need a very, very good open communication structure. There is nowhere to hide. You can't keep information from people because then they pick up on downsides from the outside world. So clear and concise and open communication is critically important. Secondly, you've got to have a no-blame culture, because the second somebody tries to call somebody out and say it was his fault or her fault, you're on a losing streak straight away. It's vitally, vitally important. It's something we can explore in future programs about just how important that no-blame culture is. Because what it does, it gives people the confidence to be extremely open and come forward with suggestions and indeed admit their own mistakes, and other people can help them through it. Thirdly, I think it's really, really important that you have to take a long-term perspective. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world at the moment which is very, very negative, and it's very easy to just keep saying, well, is it going to get better? What's going to happen? What happens if this doesn't happen? Actually, what you can do is you can take a much longer term view of it and say, right, coming out of the other side of this, and humanity will come out the other side of this, what do we want to be? How do we want our business to look? How do we want our people to perform? And I think the fourth thing, which is critically important, it's the level that we touched briefly on our introductory program a while back about the importance of trust. As a leader, you have to be trusted. You cannot put yourself in a position ever when people can go back to you and say, but that's not what you told us. You didn't give us that right information. There's nothing wrong with giving people a tough story, but if you tell them the truth, they will trust you. And if they trust you, they'll follow you. And that's good leadership.
Yeah, so your belief in terms of how you build trust is making sure that, first of all, you lead by example, but secondly, your words and your figures really need to add up. It's really important as a leader. You don't say one thing and then do something else.
No, not at all. You have to walk the talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Powerful, open communication, constant communication, however tough the message.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. And Jim, if I can turn to you for a minute, and obviously in professional basketball, you have many different personalities within a particular team. Now, as a highly successful coach, how did you bring all these different personalities? People have different motivations. How did you create a sense of alignment and team spirit?
You first want to get a psychology degree so you can deal with all the personalities. It really is a juggling act. And I have a formula I'll run through with you all with winning culture I really believe in. And it can start from the beginning, or even, in times like now, you readjust. You got to have the structure and the philosophy. Okay, well, there's different ways of running a successful team, business, whatever it may be. Certainly, as far as Rich and I are concerned, it's sport. So how do you run a successful team? Structure and philosophy is key, all right? And then, of course, once you have your structure and philosophy, you know what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. Your talent is important. You got to have the talent. Okay, you can be a great coach or manager or organizer, but without the talent, it's going to be kind of tough. There's so much you can develop into. Then you need a spirit of conviction. If you show that spirit of conviction from the top down, it is so important, because you're going to get others to come along with you, Piper style, if you will. And then you want to celebrate the small successes. You're not going to have the great goal initially. You're going to raise the trophy initially. It's a small step everyone takes. You got to pay attention to it, though, and make sure that, you know, the people around you are appreciated, and you let them know we're on our way. Lastly, after all that, it's about the buy-in, because great teams buy in to each other, okay, and what we're about to do, what our goal is, what our flow is going to be, and how we're going to achieve this goal. And then after that, you big up people all the time. I did something we used to do together, Andy, when we used to get one person in front of the room, if you remember that, and the whole room of a couple of hundred people would just shout and scream for that person. And sometimes they would come to tears, because not often people get that big up and appreciation in life, certainly in the corporate world. Okay, but in sport, you have to do that, big them up, because when you big them up, they'll buy in. And when people buy in, it's so powerful, Andy, when the whole team, a musketeer factor, everyone together buys in, and we're going for this. It's so much more powerful than each individual trying to do it on their own.
So Jim, maybe you could just expand upon the musketeer factor. I mean, what do you mean by that? It's something I hear you talk about a lot. What is the musketeer factor?
The musketeer factor is like the old slogan you heard from the movie, from the cartoon, or the animated Three Musketeers: one for all for one. And when you get that emotional connection, that spiritual connection, it leads on to what I always talk about, the zone. When that team knows that we're going after this collectively, so therefore I'm better. We are better than I am individually, and it gives an empowerment of the team to know that you can achieve things maybe greater than yourself even.
Yeah.
There's one thing I want to add, Andy. One thing I want to add as well about you. You mentioned today situation. I just want to add this real quick. You were talking about posting books. I ran across an old book. I'm old school, and I read a book called "What Do You Do in the Times of Now When You Have Everything's Gone Up in the Air." There's an old book you'll know called "Who Moved My Cheese?" Okay, and it's very relevant to today because it's about two rats. Okay, and I'm from New York, so it immediately appealed to me. The book, and one rat, he moved the cheese. They went to a maze to find their cheese every day to eat, and they removed the cheese, and one rat got discombobulated, just really frustrated, couldn't find his cheese, and basically imploded. The other rat found new ways through the maze, new ideas, new vision to get to that cheese, and was successful in the end. And I think that's what today is all about. Can you be nimble? Can you be flexible? Can you do all the things that to adjust to what's happening so that your team can be successful in business world?
Yeah, and one of my philosophies through this time has been, I immediately said to myself, I need to pivot to win. The way that I was doing business was no longer relevant. So much was changing, and conditions had moved so much through COVID-19 and everything else. So immediately it's that mindset of I have to pivot to win. The cheese is gone, so I've got to go and find the new cheese. And I think that's absolutely right. I would also say on one of your other points, Jim, you used to say to me, how many people do you believe go to bed each night starved of praise? And that praise and that recognition culture, I believe, is a big part of creating a winning spirit, a winning philosophy, a winning culture. And maybe, Richard, if I could just pass back to you, what else do you believe we need to do? And you've worked in some amazing teams to really, establish a winning culture.
I think Jim's point about buy-in is critically important. Sometimes you get people also who potentially don't quite reach their peak within a team, and a bad company, a bad group of people will say, oh, well, that guy, that girl, they're really not for us. The question you sometimes have to ask, and that comes almost back to the leadership role as well, is have I got that person in the right place, right people in the right places? Because in actual fact, there's very, very, very few poor performers really, because once you get in a team environment, as Jim says, you recognize those small achievements and those things build. And what actually happens is if you see somebody who's finding life a little bit difficult, their role is a bit too taxing for them, you've got to sit down with those people, you've got to spend time with them, you've got to help them solve those problems, and you effectively become a mentor within the business. Now, I know that's difficult. You get in a bigger company, bigger group of people. Ron once said to me, if I spent every day talking to everybody in the factory, I wouldn't get any work done because I'd spend 2 or 3 minutes with everybody walking around the shop floor. But the skill of the leader is to look over that group of people and actually be aware of when somebody's just a little bit off. They might have a bit of a problem at home, they might have had a bad journey in, they might be struggling with their particular role, And you've got to get underneath those people and help lift them up. And I mean, again, we can talk, Jim will talk more about this in the future, I'm sure. But, you know, you don't do a call out at the 11th hour. You know, you do your call out early on when you see something's not working. And by helping those people, the people around those individuals also see that helping hand stretching out. It's great stuff for motivation.
Well, Richard and Jim, that has been absolutely fantastic. And I think just that final point of calling things early is so important for everyone to take away and remember. So Jim Brandon, Richard West, it's been an absolute pleasure and a privilege. And I really look forward to talking to you again.